Well, so it's so good to see you, Wolfie. Me and Wolfie
Yeah,
work together, so that's how I know. Wolfie here. You are in Chengdu. Chengdu, is that how you say
yeah, yeah, Chengdu.
it? Chengdu. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so starting out, because everybody's going to want to know, what's going on with the coronavirus over there in China?
Um, so the things have been much better. I think it's probably like 90% back to normal.
Okay,
So like it's funny, like I just went to the theater last night to watch a film, and that was the first time that I watched the film this year. So I think the cinemas they were like the kind of like the last batches of businesses that can resume back to working. I think that was from maybe like last month.
okay,
So a lot of the businesses have reopened over the year. But theaters and cinemas they were kind of the last, and
okay,
now they're finally back to normal. So it's pretty. I mean, the thing is, if you go to public transportation, if you take buses, take subways, you still have to wear a mask. But if you go to some restaurants or shopping malls, you don't have to. Like they kind of stopped like requiring you to wear a mask. Like for like 2 months earlier, they were still like shopping malls were still requiring you to wear a mask and take your temperature before you go in. Now they kind of gradually stopped doing that.
okay. All right. In the
Yeah.
theater, did you have to wear a mask?
Well, nobody checked on you, but like you were advised to do so.
Oh,
And if you're, it's very funny because like if you're going like if you're going with your friends, you can sit next to each other. But you have to space out one seat
okay,
next to your like other strange audience.
right. What's your favorite travel story?
Oh, travel story. I think um this you mean the story that happened to me
Yeah.
or just a travel story? Hmm. Um. It's hard to think. Like my travel stories are like pretty mundane, I would think. So like you make up a plan, you go somewhere and you stay the vacation there. Like I haven't really traveled. Um, I can think of the time that when I was exchange student at South Korea, I was staying in Seoul, but that was a time that I traveled alone a bit, like in Seoul and across the country.
Yeah.
Um, so my story is like pretty. It's like it was like an experience of like trying to do like solo travel, but I pretty much messed up the whole plan. Like I was on my own, but like things didn't really work out as I wanted to. So like I traveled from Seoul to this eastern coast city of South Korea where I wanted to see the sunrise overnight. So I took a train from Seoul. I don't remember the name of that city, but it's close to the border of North Korea. So I was the only one. I took the train from Seoul to that city overnight. So like from 12 a.m. to like 4 a.m. So I can check if I can see the sunrise. And well, it's just when I went to the Seoul station, um, I was approached by this. It was a strange experience. So like I was approached by this lady, asked me. So you know, Seoul has a lot of red light districts. I
Has a
was
lot of red light districts.
yes,
Okay.
it was legal. It was illegal. So like, but it was a weird experience. Like I on my way. I went to that train station. And this lady approached me and is saying things in Korean. I said I don't understand Korean, and she used this gesture. She's like, do you are you looking for sex or something? I was like, and she kept doing that. It's like that was weird. And then yeah, that was a weird beginning for the trip. And then I was on the train to the eastern coast of South Korea and to see the sunrise. And there was no sunrise at all when I arrived. There was like a big pool of rain. Um, and I was sitting on the beach, and I was the only one, and and I was soaked. Like there was no, there was like Korea has this thing like if you went there and everything was in Korean, and I can't read it and can't really communicate and can't really like take buses. So like I don't know, it was a weird trip, but I still remember to this day. Like I was sitting on the beach and getting soaked and and not figuring out where I should go because I can't even read those things. But yeah,
I mean,
I,
sometimes.
ever after that, I didn't really do any solo travel. It's like I'm not really good at planning that.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes the most fun trips are the ones that get a little screwed up, though. You know what I mean? You have a good story out of it, and you just move on.
Yeah, yeah, it was weird. Like I didn't talk to anybody after that about this trip. Like when I returned to the school, it's like people asked me, "Oh, so you went on a solo trip? So how was it?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't even know how I felt."
Okay, well then in China, like for
Yeah.
instance, if I was there, which hopefully we'll get to hang out in China sometime, that would be really cool. But if I was there, what would we go do? Like what's a good day in Chengdu, and then what's a good like travel day?
Um. Hmm. So if it's a travel day, I think we can take like a probably 3 day or 4 day trip to Sichuan. So like Sichuan is like a really huge province.
Hmm.
Like Chengdu is in the like an eastern part of the province,
Okay.
which is like a plain territory. But when you go to the west, it's a lot of mountains, and the mountains basically um, next to Tibet. So there are a lot of things to see along the mountains. So
Hmm.
if it's a for probably if it's a short trip, like 3 days, 4 days, we can go to this place called Jiuzhai. Go, it's like a valley in the mountain. You can Google it up. Like pictures are like picture the scenes from there were pretty, uh, especially in this time of the year. So a lot of rain, so you can see a lot of water. So um, that's something we can do for a field trip. But like if you want to spend time in the city, a couple of things to see. You can see the pandas. There's a pretty big panda um, incubation base. Basically, they want to focus on research and the breed. It's like a breeding research center.
Mm.
Um, so it's a little bit far away from the city downtown, but a lot of people go there um,
You
when there's good
sound
weather.
you sound not thrilled about the pandas. And if I remember right, you don't love the pandas.
No, I don't. I mean, well, I do like the pandas. Like they're cute.
They are
I
adorable.
just I just sometimes I just like confused like why just because they're cute and just because they're on the brink of extinction and somehow they become like a national treasure. It's just I mean they're lazy and they're dumb. But anyway,
That's just because they're on the brink of extinction. Who cares about the pandas?
but yes, so there are two like research centers in Chengdu about pandas. Like one is like close to the downtown, and the other one is like 2 hours away from the city. Um, so that one is like pretty. So the far one, further one, it's a pretty. It's much bigger,
Mm,
and you can see a lot of more activities that you are allowed to see. But after the 2008 earthquake, that base was kind of destroyed
oh no.
severely. So a lot of pandas like ran out of it.
Whoa.
Uh,
Whoa.
yeah, and then so they rebuilt one. But the things you can see in those like research bases, like you know, staff like feeding those small panda babies, a lot like giant pandas. They're hanging around in the park where you can see with a distance. I think back in the days you can still pay to stay close to a panda and take a picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think they probably still offer that service. But the only panda they will offer you to take photo with are like those giant pandas, like very mature ones. They just sit there eating an apple, and then you can stand next to it and hug it, and then take pictures. But surprisingly, I think their fur is a little bit very rough.
Okay.
Like it doesn't feel fluffy the way you see.
Right. Right. Right.
So it feels differently. But yeah, that's something you can do outside of the city. And if it's a good weather, there are a lot of tea houses in Chengdu. People just enjoy that. So
Mm-hmm.
just stay there, relax, and there's this weird um, service like to clean your ear. The ear cleaning
Oh,
service with a
you mentioned this. Wait, explain this a little bit more. What is this now?
um. So it's a kind of so it's very unique. Like you don't find this service anywhere like elsewhere in China. I think it's probably like a Chengdu thing. So it has been there for a long time. So it's more it's like a legacy. So like there are some people in the city who are so into that kind of service that they try to protect it as a heritage.
Okay.
Um, it's really funny. So they're basically, if you go to a tea house, there's this guy. They're trained. They they can clean your ear, with their tools and pick up all the shit out of your ear. It's like,
Oh, God.
and it's you see the articles I shared with you from BBC that the experience is like it's very smoothing. It's not it's not you feel like I don't know your ear has been cleared like for a long time.
Really?
So it's like your brain has been cleared out after a while, and it probably feels refreshing. I tried it once in my life, so it did. So so especially the last step of it. So they have this like little tools, different tools used at different steps. So they will clear your ear, and then they will pull out like a steel, like a very small piece of steel into your ear, and then will vibrate it.
Okay.
So when they will vibrate, you will feel the vibration into your brain. That process makes you feel, ooh, it's like refreshing.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
it's like 10, 20 minute service. 10 minutes there, 10 minutes there. Um, so you can see a lot of people doing that, offering that service in the park, in tea houses. So it's actually, I watched some documentary about how those guys try to protect this technique. So they will train their staff how to be steady using your hand.
Mm.
Because you're holding a tool inside people's ear, you cannot really shaky. So you have to be very, very steady with your hands and you pick up stuff. So the way they train is they will they will boil an egg. So when you boil an egg, there between the shell and the egg there is a very how do I say it? So there's a so between the egg and the shell there's like a slight piece of paper like wrapping the egg up.
Mm-hmm.
So what they train is like if you're using a tool to slowly crack out the shell, but without um, cracking the wrapped paper kind of thing. So
Okay.
you have to be very steady with
Oh
your
my
hands, with
goodness.
your fingers. So yeah, it's an intricate thing.
I'll have,
If you're here, I will recommend you trying. I mean,
I would totally do
it's
that.
like a
It
20
sounds
minutes.
kind of like I don't know, you get facials or like massages
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it sounds kind of soothing. From this distance, I don't even think about how big China is most of the time. But then as I was sort
Mm,
of looking on Google Street View, I'm like, holy crap, there's just so many different
yeah.
cultures or sections of China that are all very different from each other. Um,
Yeah.
So I guess maybe maybe the stereotypes would be different depending on where you are, but if there was one stereotype about China as a whole or about Chinese people that you would want to combat, what would that be?
Oh, hmm. Um, I don't know if this is a stereotype. Maybe I feel that. Maybe you can tell me whether there is this kind of feeling. So like
Hmm.
when so like Chinese is not um ethnic. I think most of the Westerners think China as a Chinese as a one group of ethnic,
Okay,
which is not technically true because Chinese is just like a nationality. It's like American.
right.
There are all different ethnics in the U.S. But people like to. I think people tend to think like Chinese are one type of ethnic. Um, but like 90% of the Chinese are Han. That is an ethnic. But you still have a lot of other minorities,
Okay.
ethnic minorities. Um, there are Tibetans, there are Uyghurs, there are Mongolians, there are Manchus. They're all considered Chinese, but many of them do live overseas and they may not have Chinese nationals. So not every Tibetans are Chinese. That's also true. So I think that's one thing people don't necessarily realize.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
like it's a very diverse. So well, I mean, 90% of the population are still Han. So and minorities are you know are very scrupulous people in terms of like population. Um, but Mongolians, Tibetans, and Uyghurs, the Manchus, they're probably the biggest ones
Okay.
in Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, and Tibet. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's another. Um, yeah, I think that's the main issue, and I think a lot of the people think um, the so there's a new profile in a lot of the Western TV shows or movies about kind of dress that comes from China.
Hmm.
This kind of very slim dress.
Okay.
We're talking about qipao, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So it's very funny because that's not technically a Han costume,
Okay.
but the Manchu's costume. So it was so China was under the ruling of the Manchus when they opened up this border to the overseas countries. That was when it had interaction with global powers back in the 19th centuries. That was how the Western saw China at the time. So they think Manchu stuff represented the Chinese culture, but you know the actual Han costume look very different from the Manchus or Mongolians or Tibetans. So it's very different.
I see.
I think it's just like there's some like a they're kind of like a stereotype about um, how China's composition is. You know,
Yeah, totally. I mean,
um,
definitely agree there. I think people think everybody sort of looks the same in China.
right? Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I think. But if you go to Tibet, if you go to Xinjiang, you will see like Tibetans and Uyghurs. They do look differently from Han. Like even in terms of their physical appearance.
Hmm.
I mean, sometimes over the years, many Uyghurs they married Hans and they have children and they kind of mixed up, so they gradually like look more alike.
Hmm.
But if you go to like a further area in Xinjiang where most of the population are still like 100% Uyghurs, I think their appearance are very unique in themselves. So
Yeah.
it's very and many of them I don't know if you follow there are news in recent days about like how people in Inner Mongolia are protesting about the middle schools are trying to using Mandarin to replace their local language. So in the past, they probably teach materials in Mongolian. They try to protect this language, and now there's a new rule that they have to replace with Mandarin, and people are start protests.
Hmm.
That's why you see like there are different cultures and people want to protect. And it's very sad. Like not a lot of people speak Manchurian. Like they were once the dominant. They were the last dynasty in China.
Okay.
So, but a lot of people start. The population gets smaller and smaller, and the language is starting to die.
Right.
Not many people speak it. Not many people even know the written language of it. That's the saddest part. Like you have to protect the written language. So yeah, I think that's probably one thing people think about China is like it's a whole. Everybody's the same.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think that's
And
probably
the north
stereotype,
and the north and south have so many different cultures. The northern parts, so people living from the north, they prefer wheat, kind of. So their main, so southern people prefer rice generally.
Okay.
Whereas northern people prefer, buns and stuffed noodles made of wheat.
Okay. Okay.
It's just a different weather, different agricultural background in the past that made this distinction.
Yeah, I think the thing that comes to my mind in terms of like, well, I don't know, stereotype, but like a narrative associated with China is sort of this great firewall. So whether people in China are getting the same information or sort of understand what's going on, in the world or even in China, if their government is restricting the amount of information they get. But maybe you can expand upon that or sort of talk about that.
I think the Great Wall, it definitely works to its effect. Like for a lot of, so this is a funny thing. A lot of people in crypto, they know ways to, they know ways to connect to VPNs and get around with the firewall.
Sure.
Because they need to access exchanges, their money out there. So I think a lot of people, if you want to, you can find ways to get past the Great Firewall. This just totally depends on whether you have that motivation. If you want to see the news outside, if you want to use Google services, that's just that. I mean, if you don't want to, then yes, the information you get is precisely what the censorship wants you to see.
Right.
So I just think more young people, they generally do have so I don't know. I think even for some people, they have this VPN access. They do not necessarily use it to read, outside news.
Yeah.
Or what's going on Twitter. They just use it for maybe Facebook or Instagram, that kind of like social media profiles. So it really depends on your own motivation. If you want to see, you will definitely find a way to see it. But it's just like most people gradually lose that drive. I think like most people around me, they don't really use this. They don't use VPN. They don't really read what's going on outside. So I mean, the censorship does work in its effect. I think it doesn't really matter if a small group of people use VPN to read whatever news out there. It just matters when a big majority of people do not have the access.
Right.
That's what matters to the censorship. Like, if there are things that I don't want people to read. So yeah, it's. If I look back, like probably from 2000 to 2010, that was a period that China had much more liberal internet environment. But after 2010, things get more and more restricted. I remember like when I was in high school, when I graduated from high school, I could still use Google.
Okay.
From within China. But a few years later, the service got shut down. So like the censorship is getting, tougher and tougher every day. That's for sure. I think for the past 10 years.
Why do you think that's happening? Like now over I mean, I don't know, the internet is a way different place than it was in 2010. So a lot of things probably could have happened, but in your
Right.
mind.
So this gets a little bit political. I think politics is definitely one thing. I think the other thing is like internet is not as popular as it's not as popular. Well, it was not as popular as it is right now, right? 10 years ago.
Right.
So when it was like 2008, especially mobile, that's for sure. So mobile. So first internet and second is mobile. So back in 2008, nine, um, there are not a lot of people using mobiles like smartphones. Like there were no smartphones at the time. People do have access to the web, but the influence of Weibo, the Chinese Twitter, it was not as it didn't really reach a giant majority of the audience of the population in China. So a lot of people who use Weibo at the time were intellectuals, like young people, um, kind of more liberal thinking. So that kind of group of people, and there were a lot of celebrities on that platform used to, speak out for things, that they think that are unjust, that are,
Sure.
they think that's not right. So they're kind of the influencers speaking out you know, for the public. That was how it was perceived back then. But as the internet grows over the past 10 years, like the mobile has made this internet reach to like very wide audience. So it's like if you spread one opinion over that platform, it get reached to a lot of people. Not like 10 years ago. So that's how things should be managed. Because if one influencer say things that are so critical, then it can reach a lot of people.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why the censorship is going really like nuts, really nuts. Like when it was March, though that Dr. Lee, the one
Right.
who
Right.
spread out that coronavirus in December, when he died, a lot of people were like tweeting it on Weibo. So Weibo has this very fun uh the hot topic ranking. Like that's for real time. How based on how many people are searching for certain things, how many people are talking about certain things. So the Dr. Lee was like instantly ranking on the top
Okay.
because so many people were searching for it and talking about it. And then 10 minutes later, it was down to 6 or 7, and another 10 minutes, it was gone from the list.
Okay.
So like it was arbitrarily, like to me, it was arbitrarily taken down
Right.
because people they don't want people to think this is going wild, but it was going wild. I mean, everybody can see. You can even see from your WeChat feed like how many people are tweeting it.
Right.
So yeah, that's it's just it is what it is. But
Yeah.
I just think it's kind of very big influence. But on the other hand, like sometimes this so there's another thing there's another anecdote where you can see the power of the internet in China. So there was a recent incident in Hangzhou where a 50-year-old woman got lost one day, like mysteriously.
Hmm.
She just gone.
Okay.
Her husband, her nephew reported to the police, and they check out all the surveillance footage of the condo area, and she was nowhere found. She was just disappeared, like out of the blue. So this thing got so many interest from the internet that pushed the local government, the police to like actually pursue it in a very efficient way. And turned out that the husband was a murderer.
Oh my God.
Um, so had it not been so much discussion on Weibo, on social media, would the police actually going to be so persistent in finding out the suspect? I don't know. It may be just another case of mid-age women getting lost.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
She
Yeah.
may just run around somewhere and and then there's no follow up.
Right.
So
Yeah.
So when you have this kind of influence, um, I guess, yeah, it's in there are other motivations to really regulate or monitor what's going on there.
Yeah. I mean, I would just say that over the past couple years, it's been interesting to watch the sort of the conversation in the US as well. So as you're saying, like when one person's opinion can be pushed so far, and sort of then amplified across all of the internet and picked up by people who are, susceptible to believing something. So maybe it's an opinion or maybe it's just completely and utterly untrue.
Right.
You do start seeing those things travel so fast that it's like there has to be, I don't want the great firewall by any means, but there does seem to be a middle that those are two extremes. You have the firewall on one extreme, and then what's happening on Facebook and Twitter and social media in the US right now on the other extreme. It's like there has to be some sort of middle, because right now what's happening in terms of on social media, where everybody's just fighting with each other and amplifying conspiracy theories and all this other shit, it's like I think some of that trash content is hiding the fact that there are real problems, that we're just not seeing because we care too much about whatever random thing some celebrity said or whatever it might be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
So
The
I don't
problem
know
is,
what the middle is.
um, I don't know. I think the middle ground is relying on everybody just to be a decent, honest person.
Wow. Well, that's a great outlook for humanity. And to be fair, most of the time I think that that's true. I do think that's true most of the time. I have not, at least in person, usually when I meet somebody, they are decent, honest human beings that don't try to kill me or anything else, and don't try to like punch me because we have different views on stuff. So I would say in real life, that is totally acceptable. Online is very
but online is not right, because you don't. So one thing, like this gets to the privacy like thing. Like China, so the funny thing about Weibo is like it requires a level of real name verification. So you have to do KYC. So you can't really say random stuff.
Yeah, right.
But you can say random stuff on Twitter. I'm not saying there should be like real name verification on Twitter. I'm just saying it's a very different dynamics in terms of how China wants to filter things. Yeah, it's always a problem, but I don't know. Maybe it is what it is. If the human being is doomed to fail, then so be it.
I really love that. We might have to end it on that because I just love that. If human beings are doomed. So Wolfie, thank you so much for getting on and chatting about China. Hopefully I will be able to do this trip next year and then be able to also get into China and we can hang out.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
I would love for you to show me around there.
Okay.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Yeah, see you.
Bye.